Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What are some of your ghost or cryptid stories that you'd want to share? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My parents' house has a ghost in it. The first time my mom saw the ghost in 1984, she was in the basement doing laundry. The laundry room is in the back part of the basement. The steps are on the other side of the wall. A little girl in full color wearing a dress with braided pigtails walked into the room. My mom asked if she could help her, and the girl turned and walked out. My mom went to the door, and no one was in the other part of the basement. No one used the stairs, and the sliding door was locked. Right after this, the phone rang. Since then, my mom has been here upstairs in all white. My mom would often remind me to return to bed at night when she saw someone leaving my room, even though I was asleep at the time. When my brother and I had a hamster and gerbil in our rooms, my mom would see a kid go from room to room each day, watching the animals. One time, my then fiancé, now husband, was alone in the house waiting for me to get home. He said he felt like he was being watched. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a figure of a little girl standing in the hallway. When he turned to look, she walked backward and disappeared into my brother's room. He knew there was a ghost in the house beforehand, so he wasn't completely freaked out. He thinks she was there to be my protector because the phone call my mom received after the first time was the adoption agency letting me know they had a baby girl if they were interested. For context, I live in a townhouse, and one of the neighbors was around my age at the time, so we became friends. When I was over one time, I noticed he had a Ouija board from when he once lived in his previous house. Knowing this, me and him did an investigation of our own late at night. We didn't mess with the board itself, but we were testing for any spirits, ghosts, demons, etc. What we did was have a glass cup filled with water and a deck of cards or poker chips sit on the coffee table in the living room, adjacent to the couch where we sat. The only light that was on was a candle we lit to illuminate the cup of water and cards or chips to detect any movement. It was getting late, and we hadn't slept well the night before, so we were about to call it quits. The second I blew out the candle and got ready for sleep, the glass cup shattered into pieces, as if someone put a firework into the cup itself. It cut me up pretty good, but what terrified me was the loud scream that was heard after. The screaming was so goddamn loud, I'm partially deaf in my left ear. My pal didn't hear the noise, but was shaken up by the cup shattering. We turned on the lights, searched the house for whoever screamed, then cleaned up the mess left behind. The next day, we did some research into the property. Turns out, a tween girl had given birth across the street from us years ago and killed the newborn right after birth. Cops came and arrested the mother and sent her to a mental health facility where she remains still. Sad stuff. When I moved into my rental, I found a cupboard air freshener thing in one of the bedrooms that has a tag on it that says, "In memory of Nancy." I felt awkward removing something like that, so I left it be in the cupboard. We've had guests who stay in that room say they feel uncomfortable or that it gets cold in there randomly, and that bedroom door slams shut the most. My partner and I often joke that when a door slams for no reason or we can't find things, it must be Nancy. There are 3 Nancy-related instances that stand out. I'd had a nightmare that there was someone living on the roof. I woke up and laughed about it without my partner and roommate and carried on with my day. Later that afternoon, my roommate and I are getting into my car in the garage, and I happened to look up and notice that the manhole cover to access the roof is not covering the manhole. Now, the manhole cover doesn't sit flush with the roof. There's about a 3-inch rise up into the roof where it sits, so it's not something that can be moved easily by the wind. The roof also happens to be quite high. My 6'3" partner needs a ladder to access the manhole, which we don't have. My partner ended up using a chair and sticking his phone up through the hole to get a video of what was up there. since neither of us were tall enough to get up there without a ladder. There was nothing in there, thankfully, but the manhole cover was a good 3 meters away from the opening. We have no idea how this could have happened, so we blamed it on Nancy. Another time was when I was home alone and about to start work. My work shift was out on the line, and as I walked outside, I vividly remember thinking, what if I get locked out? Because of this, I carefully closed the doors, a big glass sliding door, and a small flimsy screen behind me. I have indoor cats that I don't let outside, which is why I close them behind me. After I grab my shirt, I try to open the doors and the flimsy screen door opens, but the big glass door is locked. The lock on this door is a really solid lock, and it takes effort to close, and has to be pushed in an upward movement to lock with a loud, audible click. I refused to believe that this was an accident. I closed the door gently. I didn't hear the click, plus the upward movement and effort it takes to lock makes it pretty unlikely that it happened accidentally. All other doors and windows were locked, so I had to wait 2 hours for my partner to finish work and let me back inside. The only other time this door has locked itself was when my roommate went outside to smoke and my partner and I were watching a movie in the lounge room in full view of the door. She closed the door gently, and when she finished her cigarette she tried to come inside and the door was locked. She too couldn't believe that it had locked itself and was sure my partner and I had locked her out. Despite it being a glass door, and we all remained in full view of each other for the whole time. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I live with a ghost named Nancy that likes to move things, slam doors, and lock people out. Growing up in my parents' house, I experienced plenty of freaky and weird things, but the most terrifying was this one. My bedroom was in the basement of the house, a double-wide modular home on a full basement. There was one evening where I was home alone, which wasn't uncommon at this point. I was 15 to 16 years old, so it wasn't a big deal. What was a big deal was the fact that I heard what sounded like a toddler running from one end of the house to the other in an empty house. Nobody was due back for hours yet, and I had planned to kick back in my room and read while I had peace and quiet. I ran upstairs to check out what was going on. Maybe a cat got inside somehow. We had outdoor cats. It was a rural area, but I didn't see anything or anyone. I figured maybe my wind was playing tricks on me. So I went back downstairs and got settled in again. Maybe 10 minutes later, the same running footsteps sound. Back and forth, not stopping. I ran back upstairs, this time determined to figure it out, because I'm a teenager, home alone, and starting to get freaked out. I turned on all the lights. I opened all the doors, opened all the closets, opened all the cupboards. Nothing. Now I'm freaked out. I relocated myself to the dining room table in the middle of the house and resolved to sort out what was going on. I sat at that table, half reading my book and half listening for noises for over an hour. Nothing at all. Dead quiet, except for the refrigerator compressor. I've never experienced it since, never found the source, and lived in that house for another 4 years before getting my own place. I told my parents and siblings about it when they got home. They just looked at me like I was crazy. I had seen and experienced some other things at that house before and since, but nothing as crazy as that. I don't think it was haunted or anything, as at the time of the footsteps, the house was only a few years old, maybe 5 years old maximum, because my parents had it built brand new. Another story worth sharing is about what I call the black man. I've seen this thing quite a few times. The most recent was a few years ago. I saw it once as a child. I think I was 7 or 8 years old in the basement. I always got creepy vibes in that basement growing up, so I kind of stayed out. The house was built in the 1880s, so plenty of random creaks and groans, and I'd learned to tell the difference between weird shit and normal old house behavior. This was not normal house behavior. My mom had tasked me with being the dirty laundry into the basement to the laundry area. I gathered everything up and headed down the basement stairs when I heard the doors to the laundry cubby open. Our laundry was in a little cubby or closet with creaky old bifold doors for context. I thought maybe my brother was down there and playing and opened the doors. So I continued on a line. Nothing was wrong. That's when I saw it. Standing beside the doorway was this thing, a little taller and wider, like a large man, but not a giant, but all black. I say it was black, but it's tough to describe. Many, instead of black, it was just the absence of anything, like a black hole or a man-shaped void. Head, arms, legs, feet, a human shape. It was non-reflective in a decently lit room. And it was like there was a shape, but absolutely nothing there to make the shape. It was standing there, not moving, and facing me. As soon as I saw it, it saw me and bolted past me up the stairs faster than I've ever seen anything move before. It's absolutely terrified. I couldn't make a sound. I didn't blink and forgot to breathe. It felt like forever, but it was probably only a few seconds. But after I sorted myself out of it, I dropped, bolted up the stairs to get my mom and dad. I've seen things over the years, and like I said, I still have no explanation. It took a few years for me to unravel it because as a kid I couldn't process it. But I've had other experiences with this thing and a few as an adult. One as a kid and 3 times as an adult. I'm late 30s now. It's brushed past me and I was entirely overwhelmed with the sensation and emotion. It was so absolutely cold like I've never felt before or since. As for emotion, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of anger, despair, and grief. It was a really strange mix of emotions that took me a while to put into words, and I can only really sort it out because I've had personal interactions and experiences that caused the fountain emotion at the time, by me very close to a violent or murderer. But this overwhelming feeling when the black man touched me was like those feelings cranked up to an 11. I still don't quite know how to get the experience into words, but when I saw it, and the first time as my child, it absolutely messed me up for a week. It's so funny how some people are very skeptical of a ghost or cryptid or an afterlife or whatever. And then some people are just like, yeah, I live in a house with a ghost named Nancy. And it's just matter of fact. Pretty weird, right? What do you think? This is a secondhand story from my deceased dad. He was out hunting in a tree stand. He was alone, but had a friend come to check on him eventually. Anyway, at some point, he went from on the stand to the ground a good distance away. He says he was thrown and remembers seeing some of his stuff that was on his person a good few days ago. Then, as he described it, a ghost of a woman appeared. She had no legs. She spoke to him and told him not to shoot a moose or elk, the 2 things that he would hunt for. Forgot which, or he would die before his son, me, either turned a specific age or in a year. I don't remember the details of this part. It could have been within a year. I remember my dad making it past the allotted death date and mentioning it when I was younger. It was at that point he realized he couldn't move or make a sound. She told him to shoot his rifle 3 times in the air, and his friend would pick him up. Then she moved into a tree and disappeared. Sure enough, he shot. His friend noticed his stuff was away from him and was confused on why he was on the ground. Later, he shot at something, and it almost seemed like his bullet curved or missed the way Dad passed the time when he said he would die, but he did nothing and ended up dying in January of 2019 due to health problems and alcoholism leading to a heart attack. My hypothesis on what happened was that some sort of forest guardian type thing is what this woman was. If anyone else knows any first Nando tales about anything like that, I'd be interested. When I was in high school, I'd spend most evenings at my friend's house with him and his mom. Their home had basically become my second home. I showed up early one day while my friend was still at practice. His mom didn't mind though. She invited me in and said he'd be home soon. We can play some dominoes or something till he comes home. She had always told me stories about a ghost she had in her house, doing all the normal ghost shit, turning on lights, turning on water and water faucets, hearing footsteps and opening doors. I always thought that she was just trying to scare me until this night. We sat down at a table and scrambled our dominoes face down to set up for our game. I grabbed my stack and she hers. I started setting up mine on the domino side in a row and placing them in the order I wanted to play them. We were playing 5-10 minutes and my turn was coming. I reached for the domino I wanted to play, and just as I was going to grab it, it began sliding on its side rapidly in a very jagged motion, almost like when two opposing magnets push away from each other, making it sort of raise. It happens in an instant, and I sat there sort of puzzled and confused for a second. I wasn't scared. There wasn't any ominous music going, no heavy, dark, or uncomfortable presence. I was just puzzled, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Looking for the table, thinking she hadn't seen what in a while, are 3 magnets in these dominoes. No, she yelled before I could finish, and that domino is just moving. I told you I had a ghost in us. No, the memory is etched into my mind, and I will never forget it. I can still hear every inflection in her voice, the look on her face, and the vivid image will undergo the domino still standing on its side, sliding across the table in front of me.